Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody. The podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really thrilled to have two wonderful guests on. So we have Bonna, who is the CEO and president of the Asia Society with one of their chapters based in Houston, and Rishi Varma, who is a co-chair of their annual signature fundraising event called the Tiger Ball. And it truly, had the good fortune of going to it last year, and it truly was just a magical evening on every level. And what the organization is able to do with the space, and this is really, if you're struggling with how do I transform my space into something amazing, this is going to be the segment you're going to want to listen to. And have chatted with Bonna and Rishi for the last few minutes in the green room, and they're wonderful people. And I know we're going to have a lot of fun today. So with that, Bonna, Rishi, welcome. And I'm so thrilled to have you both on as guests today.
It's our
Well, thank
pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.
I
yes,
am
thank you.
absolutely, I'm thrilled to have you both. So Bonna, I'm going to address the first question to you. Talk a little bit about what the mission of the Asia Society is.
So, the mission of Asia Society is to build cross cultural understanding to uplift and build a more inclusive society. That is a mouthful, but if you look at today's environment, our mission was founded by John D. Rockefeller, based in New York about 70 years ago. But if you look at today's time, the divide that we have, cross cultural understanding, for all of us to see one another as friends and neighbors, it is more critical now than it was 70 years ago. And so I have the pleasure of uplifting programming through the arts, visual and performance. I have the beauty of uplifting the cross-cultural understanding through education and outreach, and also in business and policy discussions. When you come visit our center, it is full with energy, love, and friendship, and a welcoming of introducing guests and Houstonians to how do you understand one another through the perspective of Asia or Asian American, and how do you build and connect with one another as people to people, from one person to another. So it's joyful, Rob, to be doing this work.
That's amazing. And you feel that, when you walk into both into the center and both into the Tiger Ball, you do feel that inclusivity, because the one thing I have always loved about Houston is how remarkably diverse it is. And it's really reflected. I see it whether I go to a restaurant, whether I go to an event, whether I'm going to the mall, the Galleria or River Oaks or wherever it is. You just see this wonderful tapestry of individuals. And I think the work that you all do with the Asia Society to really help accentuate that really, really puts a positive spotlight on it. And, I always am curious how people get involved with organizations, because the thing is that everyone gets involved for different reasons. So, Rishi, I would love to hear, your story about how you initially got involved with the organization, and then Bonna, I'll want to hear from you afterward. But Rishi, please go ahead and start.
Yeah, so it started with a lunch with Bonna and an ask about, would I be interested in participating or learning more about the Asia Society. And Bonna mentioned education initiatives and opportunities. For me, the visibility and the opportunity to bring this diverse fabric of Houston together, but also to educate, and particularly at an early age, what does it mean to learn about different cultures and different countries around the world? And if you think about, a middle schooler in Houston who may never walk the Great Wall of China, but is there a forum where they can go as a class or with their family, and they can learn and immerse themselves into different cultures around the world so that they understand the things that bring us together? You mentioned food. Certainly the things that bring us together and the things that are different, but also intended to be celebratory. So more and more people can understand that the Lunar New Year is coming up, and educate themselves on what that means and why is it important to, you know, a certain amount of the population around the world and here in Houston. So to me, it was all about how can you connect and be a bridge to so many wonderful cultures and so many wonderful opportunities around the world, particularly in Asia, to the good people in Houston. And so for me, it was just a win-win to be able to do that with such a high caliber organization like the Asia Society.
That's fantastic. And Bonna's energy is infectious. So
Yeah.
I can understand that she's probably a person that is not the easiest person to say no to. So will you get
Yeah.
involved? The answer is more likely than not going to be yes. But Bonna, I want to hear how your professional path into leading this organization
Sure.
and what you personally love so much about it.
Well, Rob, I think you're infectious too, your energy. So we can become the dynamic duo, right? We'll rule the world in regards to the nonprofit arena in Texas. I have been a nonprofit executive for more than 20 years. I'm aging myself here, but that's all right. We'll just go right in. And my background has been in social services, not the arts, not the visual arts and education. But when Asia Society really developed and grew. We used to be a very small nonprofit organization, handful of staff, and then with the support of many beautiful Houstonians, especially with the Allen family, we built a $50 million cultural center. And then the board of directors said, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this? We need a true nonprofit executive to run this. They did an international search and boom, they hired a local girl. So I found that ironic. And when they came to me and asked me to lead the organization, I was hesitant at first. But what really spoke to me about the mission was the fact that I am Asian American. I came to the United States when I was 7. I was raised in Columbia, Missouri, Rob. There was nothing out there in regards to seeing people like myself, hearing stories, understanding the traditions, the culture, the history, the heritage. And then I'm in this great city and I have 2 daughters. And for them to be able to understand their origins, where they came from, and to share it with neighbors and family and friends, all within this great tapestry of Houston, was was too hard of a reason to not say yes to come to join and lead this wonderful nonprofit. So here I am.
Fantastic. I love that both of your stories, it's, you both you both got introduced to the organization kind of in different ways, and it's almost like a chain reaction. You got asked to apply, and I'm really glad that even though there's chapters of the Asia Society around the United States and beyond, I'm glad they picked somebody local just because Houston has just such a representative. I think I read somewhere that there's actually more languages spoken now in Houston than in New York.
Yes,
And,
that is accurate.
yeah, and it just goes to show how international it is. And the fact that there's someone as talented as you, I'm not the least bit surprised because of the just tremendous diversity that's there. And you both really speak with a lot of passion about the Asia Society. And Rishi, I want to address this to you
Sure.
first and talk a little bit about what makes you so passionate about this organization.
Yeah, and it'll be a little bit of a long answer, but so I was born in this country, but grew up in Lubbock, Texas in the 70s and 80s when, I think back to Diwali, celebration, typically the Hindu festival of lights. When it was Diwali around that time of year, we would celebrate at home and we would have just like a nice ceremony at home, our family, our immediate family. But I didn't talk about it at school. No one asked me about it. There was no indication that this was happening anywhere around me. And you grow up and you start to think that that's okay. And you think that it's okay to not celebrate something because no one around you is going to know what it is. And then you know what? It's too hard to explain. And so for me, the idea that you can not just educate, but you can sort of start to weave things into how everybody thinks about their day-to-day lives, even if they don't celebrate something. And a great example of this is just last year that the Asia Society, they put on this performance together with the Grand Opera, celebrating and explaining what the Lunar New Year is on a and it was intended to be an opera for a younger audience. Let's get children there. Let's make it interactive. Let's have the actors, the performers have different masks of different animals, and then call out to the audience every now and then. But it was the kind of thing, and it's going to happen again this year. And it's the kind of thing that wouldn't it be great if that became as iconic as the Nutcracker is to so many people around the December timeframe, November, December timeframe? So for me, it was this idea that can we do this? And Bonna mentioned her two girls. I've got three children, and wouldn't it be great if they don't have to explain why they're celebrating something, but in fact, people celebrate with them, because that's the ultimate secret sauce of anything you do as a society is you come together and you celebrate with one another. And fast forward, I'm now, wonderfully walking through Target and other stores, and I see they're selling Diwali candles and cards and things like that. So it happens it happens over time. But one of the things that I love about the Asia Society is that we're not going to wait for people to come to this realization on their own. We're going to advance the way people live and work by showcasing these wonderful opportunities for them to come together. So for me, it was the idea that I could bring forward so many of the things that I didn't get to see in my childhood, but I can't wait for others to see going forward.
That's a beautiful, beautiful answer. And, having people get exposed to multiple cultures from a young age, it really allows for a really fully formed view of the world. So I love your involvement with this and how you're working to, both of you really are to, with your own children and the future generations for that. I just think that's absolutely amazing. And I want to turn the next question to you, Bonna. And, Asia Society does have a presence in multiple US cities. So I'd love to hear, why Houston was chosen as a city to focus in, because there's a handful of cities. It's not like there's only one city in the US it's a handful. But what about Houston made, Asia Society say, I want to plant roots here, as opposed to many of the other cities that they could have gone?
Right. Houston is such an international city, Rob, as you mentioned. There's so many different languages. And then we're also outpacing New York. I think you will find it interesting that we are outpacing New York in regards to the Asian community growth also. And Houston is going to be the city we're setting the pace of what other cities in the United States will look like. We've heard that from Dr. Kleinberg from Rice University over and over again. And so I'm proud that Asia Society chose to build a center in Houston. And it is Texas. Everything's bigger here. So we have to do it here. And I love my colleagues. They do great work in California, Washington, D.C., and New York. But whenever they come into our place, Rob, just so you know, they say we're extra special. And I'm just going to receive that and say thank you on that.
Well, it is extra special, and it is an extra special event, and it makes total sense as to why they would pick Houston, for the reasons that you explained. So, and I want to just ask a follow-up question to that. So, a lot of nonprofits, they'll have a presence in the city, and they're thinking about expanding and going into new markets. What's a piece of advice you would give to someone who's maybe looking to start another chapter of a nonprofit in a new city?
Rishi, would you like to take that, or would you like for me to take that?
I'm happy to try. One of the things I think is so important is to understand the philanthropic landscape of that city, and in two ways. One, is it oversaturated, or two, is it historically a type of community that does give back? And one of the things that I've just loved about Houston is there's no shortage of individuals willing to commit to the community. And you see it all over the city, whether it's the museums, the art galleries, the Asia Society. But not every city is designed that way. And so you really have to almost educate yourselves. Where are the philanthropic centers of that city? Is this viable in that city because of that? Because you've got to be able to sustain your ability to continue to thrive in that community. So that would at least be the first thing I would think about. I'm sure there are many, many others, but Bonna, if you've got others that you would like to add.
Rishi, you picked the most important aspect. I always tell my team, there's no mission if there's no monetary support. It's just that simple. And you ask why Houston, part of the reason why Houston was successful was because of the generosity of the people in the city. It's incredible, Rob. I talk to my colleagues in California. It's a different philanthropic landscape for them altogether, and I feel their pain. So understanding the philanthropic landscape and not seeing if you're starting a chapter or a nonprofit organization that's independent on its own, which we are. You have to see it not just from 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, but look at the short term financial needs and how do you sustain that, but also the long term needs, because there are too many nonprofit organizations that will start out and then they're closing their doors in 2 to 3 years.
I'm glad you mentioned, Bonna, the long game. And Rishi, I loved your answer too, because what I liked about your answer was there was a little bit of understanding the personality of the city that you're in and how open and welcoming they are to the particular service that you're offering.
Yeah.
And I always say, and we've talked about this on this program before, that I always consider cities to be people. They are characters and people themselves with personality traits. And if you understand the ethos of the city that you're going into and really do the research of that, you have a much higher likelihood of being successful. And what Bonna said at the end is absolutely key. It's not just about starting, it's also about sustaining, and then it's about thriving. And both of those together are both really important pieces of advice that really, just one flowed into the other beautifully. And one way to get donors really interested and excited is, having an event. And we're going to kind of turn a little bit more and talk about the Tiger Ball a little bit here. And for this, Rishi, you can go first, and then Bonna,
Sure.
I'd love to hear you. And that is, what are some things that an organization or a person can do to create a devoted following for its annual gala or signature fundraising event that attracts a wide range of people from the community?
So I think first and foremost, and this sounds simple, but I think I'll explain why it's not so simple, but it's got to be fun. And there are oftentimes galas that are designed, well, we have to make sure we talk about the following things. We have to make sure this person speaks, that person speaks. We have to do this thing first. And it becomes an organized meal. And people don't get a chance to talk to one another, mingle, celebrate with one another, those kinds of things. So first and foremost, it has to be fun. Second is it has to be the kind of event that you may not know what the Asia Society is before you walk into that event, but you don't have to have some sort of pre-learning, some required knowledge in order to really enjoy what they're celebrating and how they're celebrating. So you can bring people in who have been there for 10 years and people who have been here for 10 minutes, and they are going to tell you at the end of that evening that that was one of the best parties they've been to. And those are the kinds of things that people want to come back to. My wife and I, this is our signature event each year. Like, I can't wait for the Tiger Ball. This is going to be where we're going to just really, no matter what's happening in our lives, where we are, how busy we are traveling, this is an event where we get to come together, invite friends, celebrate with new friends, old friends. Everybody's very well decked out, not just in black tie, but traditional costume, traditional attire as well. And so, you see a nice, colorful mix of the community come together, and it's just fun. There's not a there's not a lot of speaking. There's not a lot of pomp and circumstance. It's just go out there, enjoy an amazing night, dance until the DJ stops playing, and then go home.
I love that. And, the undercurrent of whether you've been there for 10 years or 10 minutes, I love that the organization always wants new people to come and experience the event. And I do see that sometimes even really successful galas, it'll be the same people over and over again. And the fact that you understand that, having an infusion of new energy and new people each year is really going to be helpful in, making the event, make the event even more successful with each passing year. And Bonna, from an organizational perspective, talk about what an organization can do to really make sure that following is coming back year after year after year.
Rishi is right. You have to make it fun. And it sounds simple, but it's really an art form. It goes from the very beginning of, is your organization having people who are truly aligned with your mission? Do they have that connection with one another? And do they understand who their peers and their friends are? You sense it when you were under the big tent. The friendship and the fellowship, and the energy is so high. When I go to other galas, I'm not saying that they're not good, they're good. Ours just feel a little bit more genuine, a little bit more different and it's so high energy. So building that base to making sure that they're happy with you, but making sure that we're also recruiting the next generation of leaders and supporters coming through. So Rishi was saying, you see all sorts of colors from the attire, whether it's contemporary, Western, or Asian. I was thinking when you said that, Rishi, you see all sorts of colors of
You
people,
do.
right? You see the full rainbow, and you also see such a wide range of ages too. So, and professions. And so when you bring all of those folks together, and the anchor is global citizenship, right? We believe in that. We travel, we support one another, we're curious, we want to have that understanding of different culture and friendship. It makes such a beautiful tapestry of Houston in the best way possible. And so when you have that type of environment, stakeholders, and extension of yourself, right, of your mission to all those around you, it just gets fuller and fuller. One of your questions, Rob, that you sent to us prior was like, how did you had the creativity to move to the tent, right? It was sheer need. We used to have the ball in the building, and that was the building was able to accommodate 400 guests. It was beautiful, different rooms, different tiers. We now have 600 guests plus. So it was not practical to keep people in our building anymore, and that's why we moved to the tent. Both formats worked beautifully, but the tent allowed us all to be together more cohesively. And so it's a formula that has worked for us, and it's a formula that we're going to keep.
Well,
And
I
and
am. Oh, go ahead, Rishi.
I was just going to say, Robin, one of the nice things about this event is that it is on the premises of the Asia Society, which means, again, if you've been there for 10 minutes, you instantly know where it is and you know it's going to be there all the time. So organizations that don't have the luxury of the beautiful space that the Asia Society has, oftentimes will have their galas at different, you know, country clubs or ballrooms or whatever. And so you're in a different space already. But here, the beauty of what Asia Society does, it keeps it local. It keeps it within the community and the neighborhood where the Asia Society is. And that's sort of a given. It's iconic that,
Right.
it's the best looking parking lot in Texas, for
Well,
sure.
and you all are being modest with it beyond Texas. So, and I'm sure people are like, well, they moved it from the building to a tent. What's the magic in that? And I'm here to tell you it was magical because one, it's a risk to go, and even if you're at the same space, when you switch a format from, you're going to be indoors probably in, various rooms that may be cordoned off so you can have an intimate environment to a more
Mhm,
expansive
mhm.
space. But what makes this so magical, folks, is that it's in the parking lot, in that it's raised so that it's above all the curbs. They actually incorporate the trees that are outside into the space, and it brings the outdoors in. And it's really like it's one of the wisest investments I've ever seen because it was probably less, cheaper to buy the tent and do that than rent out a ballroom for 5 or 10 years. Like it was a really smart, innovative thing to do, and I had never seen anything like it. And I just, I don't think I've ever spent so much time just looking up at an event because, usually the stuff's like at eye level and it's like, oh my God, I cannot believe how they did this with the lights and the trees and all that. So talk about how the organization, when you made the pivot, how did the organization come up with this idea to just do something so innovative with what I don't think anyone would ever think is an innovative space?
So I think this is where the international um, aspect of Asia Society and the person we're honoring really helps anchor that, Rob. One year we highlighted Glenn and Kathy Gondo, and Glenn and Kathy were born here, but their parents were born in Japan. So it was a year of the Japan, and that was one of the very beginnings of when we turned to the tent. And we said, how do we make this tent and transport and delight and tickle all of the senses of our guests to feel they're in Japan? So it's a long production. I had the staff, I think they thought I was crazy, but it paid off. They were putting cherry blossoms onto the tree even before the tent was built and framed in. And our neighbors were walking by. They were so cute. They said, "Oh my gosh, you had cherry blossoms transported from Japan to the parking lot because it looked so real." They were faux flowers, but it looked great. And our desire is to take you back to that particular country of the person we're honoring. So that's how it stays fresh, and that's how where the creativity comes through. But it is like I said, our desire is to make sure that you are delighted and surprised, and you have a wonderful, memorable evening when you're at our Tiger Ball.
That is absolutely, I mean, you couldn't have said that any better, Bonna. And Rishi, while we're kind of on just, making things feel special, one
Mhm.
important thing, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about, when you expand into another city is, the Asia Society is an organization that's well outside of the walls, the city limits of Houston. How do you all with the Tiger Ball, how do you incorporate a local event feel to it while highlighting the mission of the organization more broadly?
I think we have the easiest of tasks because the local nature of what we are doing is, as Bana mentioned, whether it was the Gondos or this year's honorees, Ping Sun and David Lebron, we have so many people in as part of the Asia Society and then part of the community here that are global, whether they come from different parts of the world or have that in their heritage or simply as a function of their day-to-day jobs, they travel to those parts of the world. Um, they are bringing all of that and harnessing all of that cultural exchange and collaboration together when they are under that tent. And so, because of the city of Houston, because of all of the people coming together, you get those connections, and they are very local, but they are bringing it in through this kind of global feel. So it's a global event, if you will.
All right, that's a new hashtag, everybody.
Yeah,
Hashtag local.
exactly.
Rob, I do want to mention one other thing because it is an elaborate evening, but as a nonprofit executive, I am very, very frugal with donor dollars. I'm very, very careful to make sure that what we're raising is actually going back to support the programming and how we serve the public. For cultural institutions, it is not uncommon for the expense ratio or the expense percentage to be anywhere from 20 to 35%. Ours is at 22 or lower, always, because I want to make sure that the gifts from this very generous community is being used towards in support of the mission overall.
Absolutely. And that's critical. And, keeping it and, it's important to be frugal, but you also recognize, if you're spending it 20%,
That's
that
right.
it takes a little bit of funds to
That's
make
right.
money. And that's kind of where, you viewed the tent more as an investment than
That's
anything
right.
else, because there's other things you don't have to pay, you don't have to be charged by the hotel per drink because you don't have to worry about
Right.
liquor licenses and things like that. There's, when you're making those moves, there's all kinds of financial things to consider outside of just what the sheer cost of something is in the moment. Are there other ways that you're going to save longer term that's going to give your event that viability and sustainability to go on year after year?
So we believe in in-kind donations quite a bit, and so we leverage that. Again, the Houston community is so generous to us, and they enjoy the event itself. There are ways that we promote the companies or the vendors that are supporting us in a way that fits them. So it's definitely a partnership with all of the folks that we work with.
Absolutely. And, and speaking of the partnership, so, one thing is, when you have an event, and I kind of have an idea where you might be going with the answer, but talk about how you come up with the themes each year, because each year, and, I had admired this event from afar for many, many years before I went. And it was just like every year I was like, gosh, that's cool. Gosh, that's an interesting theme. How do you all collaborate together? And I'd love Bonna to start and then Rishi to follow up, but talk about how you all collaborate to create these fun, innovative event themes year after year.
So the team and I really want to honor the honorees in a way that fits them. For Kathy and Glenn, it was all about Japan. There were traditional elements that they love, and there was also elements of the city, the vibrancy of Tokyo that they wanted to bring into. And so this year, we're honoring David Lebron, who is, I believe, the 17th president of Rice University, and his wife, Wai Ping Sun, who was my former board chair. And they love China. And so it was it was understood that China would be the country of focus. But beyond China, we would sit down with them and say, what are the elements and aspects of China that you really wish for the guests to experience? Rob, if we had to depend on me to come up with a new theme every year, we're in trouble. So we really do, for us, it's a way to pay tribute to the people who are giving so much back to the city and to Asia society. But that also makes it fresh because it's coming from, again, a variety of different perspectives, depending on the year and the couple that we're honoring.
Well, and I think you're hitting on the embarrassment of riches that an organization highlighting the multicultural aspects of Asia has, which is every year we can start with a blank canvas, and and Bonna's selling herself and her team a little short because they do come up with some very creative ways to interpret the feel and the emotion coming from our honorees, coming from the work that they have been involved with, their legacies with the Asia Society, and they paint that picture based on those things. But you have so many different elements that you get to play with every year, that I think it's fantastic to think that this thing can change year to year in terms of those themes.
That's fantastic. And what I love is you all have such a really good rapport for each other. So I'd love each of you to answer this question. What is the key? And Rishi, you can go first with this one, but what is the key to having a successful relationship between an event chair and an organization to make sure that it really, event night fires on all cylinders?
So I think it's important to have a really candid relationship where the organization can ask. You don't want to be so nervous or shy about asking the event chairs to do something that you miss an opportunity. What you want is the collective forces to come together to create the best, the most record-breaking event, the best music, the best food, the best ambiance, everything. And from where I sit, I ask Bonna and I ask her staff regularly, like, challenge us, tell us what you want us to do, tell us where you need us to be, but you all are the subject matter experts, and let us be your voices where we can and amplify that. So there really has to be that comfort between the event chair and the organization in order to do that, to do it well. You don't want to ever feel like, well, I should have asked Rob, but he looked busy, so I didn't. But we'll figure it out. That happens from time to time, but I don't see that happening here, and it certainly won't happen this year.
I'm glad to hear that. And Bonna, from an organization perspective, what advice would you give to an organization in finding the right event chair to really, really make sure that your event thrives year after year?
Right. So Rishi is right. The team and I are not shy. we can't afford to be. We can't afford to be. When I look for the honorees and also the event chairs, I'm looking for people who understand that while the ultimate goal is to honor them, the secondary but very important goal is to raise funds for the institution. So there are things that we need to do that might not be, that will require some compromises, right? We want this beautiful dance floor, but you know what? It's $5,000 above the budget. And so for the staff to say, what do you think about this other option to keep us in line to make sure that we're raising the funds and keeping the funds for the programming endeavors? And so coming to the table with both parties being honest, transparent, and also being understanding of the needs that are there for the organization, that is really critical. And to have fun while you're doing it with one another, Rob. There's no reason to make it difficult. It's a joyful event. The process itself is a lot of fun. So I look for people who would enjoy doing this, who would enjoy what they're creating with us and what they want for the guests to experience when they come. Because at the end of the day, we value the relationship with all of the tiers, our honorees, our event chairs, and our guests. And we're going to do our very best to make sure that it's the highest level. It's always extremely helpful when the honorees and the event chairs understand that on the business side for the institution, there are things we need to adhere to or we need to do. And so it's a little bit of a compromise with one another, but they're not hard compromises, to be honest with you.
It's meeting in the middle and meeting in something to where everybody is happy. And, a little
Right.
bit of that, if everyone agreed on everything the whole way, there has to be a little bit of, well, I think this might work and this may not work. And the fact that you can be candid and honest with each other, like Rishi said, is incredibly important. And the one thing that we have it's been an undercurrent has been the word fun. We've said it several times. I had the good fortune years ago of interviewing Lynn Wyatt for a cover story for our
Yes.
magazine, and fun is her favorite word. So, I mean, fun is all about what Houston's about. So, I want us to, I'd love for each of you to share, and we'll start with Rishi and then and with Bonna, but talk a little bit about what guests can experience at this year's Tiger Ball.
Yeah, so it's going to be from the moment they walk in, there's going to be just vibrant colors. There's a silent auction. There's going to be lots of good food, dancing, drinks. Um, there's just this great event venue that you've already talked about with the tent, and it's just going to be the guest experience is just going to be what they make it. It can be come together with people you haven't seen in a long time because of the holidays, and it's now, gosh, it's hard to believe it's already March. Or it can be, good friends that just can't wait to get together and break bread. But whatever reason you come, the venue and the experience will be sort of the common theme will be that you're gonna really have a great experience. You're gonna enjoy the event. You're gonna enjoy the food. You're gonna enjoy the culture, and you're just going to let loose and have fun.
Fantastic. And Bonna, talk a little bit about, from an organization perspective, what guests can expect to experience just in terms of what they may learn about the Asia Society while they are at the Tiger Ball.
Rob, I almost don't want to tell you because I want to surprise you and delight you when you go there, right?
All right, a tiny tease then. Teeny tiny
A
tease.
tiny tease. Think of the tent with beautiful reds and golds, with areas where it's traditional China and some areas where it's contemporary China.
Mm.
It's going to be so lovely. The juxtapose of both is very fitting for the couple that we're honoring. The math itself, we expect 600 guests. Our fundraising goal is 1.5 million, and we believe we'll accomplish that. There's many fun auction items for guests to enjoy, and the food is being catered by City Kitchen, which is one of the best caterers, and we will delight you there too.
I've never had a bad meal catered by them. They really are. City Kitchen, shout out to them. They are really, really, really phenomenal. And I know we're coming up on time here. So I always like to ask guests, this question at the end. So we'll start with Bonna and Rishi. You can have the last word. And that is, what is one thing all successful events have in common?
It's hard to say one, but there are several things that I look at. I look at, did the guest enjoy the experience, right? We want to make sure that they're happy. And also from the moment they gave all the way through the event, somewhere within that journey, do they understand what they're giving to? Because again, that means repeat sponsorship in future years for the ball. They know that they're supporting a cause that's important to them and they had a great time. I want to make sure our honorees and event chairs had the most splendid time working and they're proud of the event that they were tied to, that they supported. And finally, always the math, which I always tell my team, did we meet our revenue goal and did we maintain our expense in the way that we needed to? And so those are the factors that are really important that I'm looking at. So it's not one, Rob, I'm sorry. There are a couple of KPIs I'm looking at.
It's always good to know what those KPIs are and that you took it all the way through. What one thing that really stood out in your answer, though, that I really liked is you can talk about what the organization does and have an understanding without beating guests over the
That's
head
right.
about
That's
it.
right.
And
That's right.
that was what I liked about your answer. You all talked a lot about the guest experience. Yes, and we're also going to tell them about the organization, but we don't need to give them a dissertation about it either. And
That's
I
right.
really appreciated that answer. And Rishi, I'd love for you to share what
Yeah.
you think what you
So
think is an
it
element of
it
that.
it won't sound exciting, but when I think back to when my wife Michelle and I were first asked to co-chair this event, it was, close to a year out. And so effective planning and organization. And at every step of the way, you're making sure that you have not missed an opportunity to do the very best thing that you could have done, talking about the honorees and what would it make to make the the event look more like Japan. Well, let's try putting cherry blossoms in our parking lot under a tent. If you're doing that 2 months out of the event, you're not doing it. But when you think about how long it takes to really plan this type of an event, it's that effective planning and preparation that Bonna and her team are so good at that really does culminate in this amazing celebration of the Tiger Ball.
Well, I'm glad you brought up planning because one thing I will never forget this, as you know, and I go to a lot of things, but I will never forget this. When I was looking through the program last year, I noticed that you had the date for next year's gala on there, which I thought
And
was
the honoree,
brilliant.
Rob, and the
I
honoree.
remember that too. It was just like, wow, like I'm like, now that's effective planning. And when it's fun, people are going to want to come back the next year. And that's,
Yeah.
I love that you ended on that note, Rishi, because that allowed us to really come full circle here. So, Bonna, Rishi, congratulations in advance. I know it's going to be a great night, but also just thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. It was really, really fun.
Yes, thank you for having us. Appreciate the support that you offered for to Asia Society.
Absolutely. And Tiger Ball 2025 Enchanting Shanghai will be held on March 7th, 2025 at the Asia Society Texas Center in Houston, Texas. For more information, please visit asiasociety.org/Texas. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.